So what I've learned about jinn essentially is they are something happens when you disincarnate from your body, when the soul leaves the body, and you get stuck, or the jinn gets stuck. The genie and the jinn, they get stuck in the disincarnational phase. Essentially, what happens is they have the memories and the emotions of the human, but they have the abilities of the spirit, which is an infinite, essentially a god or whatnot, you might say. And so they can be very petty, they can become attached to people, and they can cause a lot of havoc in people's lives because they still think like a human. You know what I mean? Imagine giving a human god powers. That's crazy.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I'm your humble servant and seafood Taoist Master Sun Qing, and it's another doozy here today, Christmas morning for me. Once again, the universe has heard and has prevailed with an incredible being, another new friend to the channel, and I want to introduce the incredible light being, David Lotherington. How are you, my friend?
I'm wonderful. Thanks so much for having me. And ironically enough, my name in Mandarin is Dawei.
Ah, Dawei. Very nice.
We're meant to be here. We're meant to be
here. Well, so I would love you to share with the audience a little bit of the backstory leading us up to this very moment.
Where would you like me to begin?
Wherever you choose to, my friend. Let your guides guide you.
All right. They tend to be pretty good at that, so I'm just going to let it happen. So at about approximately 28 years old, I started having my awakening process. Mm-hmm. And before that, I would say my life was driven by the matrix or the universe. I didn't really have a say in where I was going. I'd always listen to other people, what they told me what to do with my life. And like, you should get a Bachelor of Science, Dave. Okay. You should become a paramedic, Dave. Okay. And I always did all these things that other people told me to do. When I was 28, I started having my awakening. And an awakening is when more of your soul enters into your body. And so my consciousness raised and my awareness went up, and I started to question what I was doing with my life, and I started to become aware of psychic things, let's just say. I started to see auras, and I started to see shadow beings and things like that, but my visions were blurry, and I couldn't quite hear clearly the voice of spirit, you might say. And I took Reiki. I eventually became a Reiki master some years later. And then I started my own Reiki practice. And then as I did more Reiki, my psychic abilities became stronger and stronger. And eventually I was able to see chakras of people that I was working on. I could see the spin rate, the color. I could see entities in people's fields, and if the chakra was spinning properly, blah, blah, blah. And where did I go from there? I guess eventually I ran into a person, and she asked me to teach her what I knew. And that was the very first person that I started the mentorship program with. And I just taught her pretty much everything I knew at the time. And I grew as I was teaching her. Mm-hmm. And then eventually I started a mentorship program, and then 2 people joined, and then 3 people joined, and then 4 people joined at a time. And eventually it became a mystery school. So here I am.
Oh my goodness. That sounds profound and completely like grounded in my reality. It's almost like you're speaking on. You sure you're not reading my bio? I'm not sure, but it's amazing how you attune to these things. And I sort of discovered that over 30 years ago. There's a level of development when it comes to the clairsenses, and the beautiful part is within Taoism, we have systems to replicate and develop those very sensory perceptions. So when just for the audience, when David shares all this stuff with me, I'm like, right on. And any of the OGs that are experiencing this stuff, whether they're my students or just people watching the show, will be able to feel the transmission, the resonation, the synchronicity that we're experiencing right now. So, it's like, just like it seems like it would seem like indigestion in your chest, a light feeling of some type of heaviness, that is the energy. And that's the energy that David and I are sharing right now. And it comes in all different forms, from auric fields that would seem like more like a transient sort of like snapshot. It's like blood work. So auras sort of constantly resonate, and they change at, second by second basis. It really depends on what you're looking for. But when you said all that stuff to me, I was like, welcome, dear brother.
I do recognize you, I would say, on a soul level. I feel a resonance with you for sure.
Yeah, you're speaking my language, and it's like, this is a thing that I find really interesting with a lot of people. They get set in a certain way, and then they're told, "Oh, you can't do that," and then they get stuck in that, and then the idea of having a sensory perception development to that level as an impossibility. Of course, that's the first roadblock, right? That's the first. Deviation, or as my dear friend Martin would say, the dukkha, looking for the distortion. It's a distortion. It's not the truth. And it's only validated within your own experience. From my journey consciously within this incarnation in this lifetime, it's validated by you. Your truth is the only truth you need to be concerned with. And that's where it starts and ends, in my opinion. And so when you get incredible masters like David that are able to share these incredible insights and development skills, this is what it's all about. This is what wakes up the masses. This is the conscious collective we speak of, my friend.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So tell me more about this development. Now, did it come in a form, for me personally, when the clairsense turned on for me, it was literally overnight. I woke up and there was 1,000 icons on the screen. Anywhere I looked, I get information, energy, all of it instantaneously. And it took me a while, about 72 hours, to adjust to, hey, I can actually call in what I want or don't want at will, more or less, depending upon the circumstance. How is it for you?
So you started seeing numerological sequences to start?
I saw everything. So it literally, I woke up, all the auras, all the information, all the thought forms, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, instantly accessible. So when I teach someone how to read an aura, or do what I call a black ops, a drive-by psychic reading, where you don't know someone, you walk up to them and go, "Would you like me to read your aura?" And they're like, "Sure, magic man, read my aura." And they get a little freaked out, because it's just a system. All I'm doing is looking at the energy centers and what you would call chakras. And I'm looking at the ecosystem within that, which is the 5 elements that we refer to. And there's an excess or deficiency of emotion due to virtue. And within that is the traits of the individual. And so you can instantly pull out what's what, where, who, and how. And people freak out and go, "What the?" And, I start from the bottom, and then I get to what within Taoism we consider the bottom. The first energy center is the earth. So then you go to the second one, which is the root chakra for you guys. And then the third one is the sexual energy. But let's just say I get to the root chakra, and they get all weird, because how do you know I'm defensive and I like boundaries and I'm this and I'm that? And because it's just information sitting there. And then when I get to the sexual energy, whoa, you got to stop right now. Oh, I'm just reading. Okay, there's a little deficiency here. You might have some, inhibitions that you're looking at, sexual deficiencies, ED, other things. That it's just information. And they go, whoa, stop, whoa. And I'm just like, it's just there. I'm not committed to this, my friend. That's the very difference between a lot of people. When they get in this space, they want to be validated. And when David or myself, when you get to a level of understanding and mastery, it's no longer about validation. It's just, this is my reality.
It's just a bunch of truths.
It's just the truth.
I'm just the person that tells the truths, and you can interpret that however you want.
Right.
But they're going to believe that or not, depending on their belief systems, right?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, what happens is there's not a single thing that you can't pull out that isn't validated in one way, shape, or form. Even though they go, "Well, that's your truth as you know it." And you know very well that's the truth. The second that poke the bear, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, well, I've never questioned this stuff in 30 years and I've done it thousands and thousands of times, but you're this special, unique individual that it's not working on, but you're having a reaction that tells me I'm right in the center of the center of the center. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. So you refer to a chakra below the root chakra as the earth chakra. Is that correct?
Yeah. We use it as just an anchoring point. You might call it a transpersonal point.
Yeah, we typically refer to the root chakra as the earth chakra. So
right.
That's typically how we use our grounding and balancing exercises.
Yeah. So we have a 9 energy centers in the base system. And so normally you would have 7. We have 9. And so the earth is 1. And then you go up to 7 that you're familiar with. Then you have the byway for Taoists, which is the enter of heaven's gate. And then the 9th one is the Tao.
So the crown chakra is the entrance of heaven's gate, essentially.
Yeah. And then we have one above that, which you would consider a transpersonal point, which we call the Tao, or the access to the universe.
So we'd call that the soul star chakra. And there's another one called the starlight chakra as well.
Yeah. I mean, really, within the system, we have 108 energy centers. In Hinduism, I think there's 114, but quite frankly, there are infinite amount. Like once you polish off, like, say, maybe 27 energy centers, you sink them in, you're basically superhuman. You're levitating, you're doing crazy stuff. I mean, it doesn't take much to get there.
You're right. I think the most important thing is to understand the ones that are inside the body, because they have the greatest impact on us, because they're part of our physical chakral system. This creates our physical reality before us. So
yeah. 100%. So tell me more. So you got this reading. Now you're deciphering information as it comes to you. Have you slowed it down a little bit? Do you sort of make it a little bit more, individual sort of basis? Because it can be overwhelming.
Yeah. Are you referring to like receiving energy from people empathically or clairsentient?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, a lot of people. I had this woman on earlier today, and she's a card reader, and she believes in energy, but her big part is protection. And I always remind her, and this is a thing that freaks people out. It's like, okay, if you say so, energy is energy. So, what happens is people get deep into their protection, but you're also experiencing me running energy through your body. How is that possible? And she's like, I'm not sure, because I'm on my protection mode. Well, you are me, I am you. And so there's kind of like the fearlessness that comes with how I sort of operate gives the universe is a universe. When that present moment is here, all things are realized. So it's like, holy crap. Like, just like, like David and I are experiencing this right now. He's getting a lot more energetic sensitivity sort of pulsating through his hands. He's started to feel more energy. It's all just right in front of us. And so that degree and amplitude can be determined by our synchronizing, our resonation, and that expansive feeling is just something that we have. And what do I do? How do I get there? I see it, and then I feel it, because the feeling is the validation for me. So first and foremost, I see it, and then I experience it. It's like a precognition type of thing that someone will relate to within a parapsychologist sort of mode of metaphysics. You know what I mean? But it's really the after effects of what has already happened.
I could feel your empathy as soon as I connected with you. Empaths, there's a couple of cool things about empaths. I'm sure you've experienced a lot of them, but for the audience, they might want to hear about it.
Yeah, go. I want you to share. I'm very excited.
Sure. I've learned that empaths, we typically suck with boundaries, especially earlier in our life. And we'll give up everything for someone else, but we don't save enough for ourselves. So empaths typically have low self-love. That's something we have to work on as we go through life. We need more time by ourselves to ground and balance the energies that we're taking on from other people. Because empaths have these cords that stick out of their auric field that suck up negative energy from people around them, making them like passive healers for people. And unfortunately, they take on that burden because that's what their job is, essentially. So if you're using too much protection as an empath, you're actually denying everyone from healing. You're saying, no, 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 perhaps you're too overwhelmed or whatnot, or you're just burnt out. That can happen with empaths. And sometimes they will actually block their empathy and stop that because they can be too overwhelmed in public spaces, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I mean, the Taoist practices are kind of very clear. We sort of start with the constitution, your Qing, your essence. So you get born into this world with a constitution that sort of works on, you know, a battery level. So out of 100%, most people, due to their heretic sort of like past ancestors, gene expression, however you want to put it, you're laid out a certain dealing of cards per se from your birth into this realm. It starts with that battery that's not always at 100. I've never seen 100% starting point. It's only about 70, 80%. And with the practices that I teach people, you bring your energy to 100, then you go from 100 to 1,000, infinite amount, and you saturate the physical body and compress that energy. And that makes and refines your mastery of the 50 trillion cells that you possess. And of course, you go way beyond that flesh and blood to access this present moment. But it's never ever accessed as your own energy. And it's not about protecting yourself. You just realize that there's a certain way to access that universal stuff that is abundant. What are your thoughts on that?
Did you say Jin?
Jing, G-I-N-G.
G-I-N-G. I was thinking J-I.
Sorry, J-I-N-G. Yeah.
J-I-N-G. Okay. I've learned a thing or two about Jin over the years. I thought maybe that's what you were referring to specifically, but energy, well, I kind of got stuck on the Jin thing, to be honest with you.
Hey, go wherever you need to go.
So what I've learned about Jin essentially is they are, something happens when you disincarnate from your body, when the soul leaves the body, and you get stuck, or the Jin gets stuck, the genie and the Jin, they get stuck in the disincarnational phase. Essentially what happens is they have the memories and the emotions of the human, but they have the abilities of the spirit, which is an infinite, essentially a god or whatnot, you might say. And so they can be very petty. They can become attached to people, and they can cause a lot of havoc in people's lives because they still think like a human. You know what I mean? Imagine giving a human god powers. That's crazy.
Yeah. No, when I mentioned it was a G-I-N-G, it's sort of like basically the constitution of your physical body. But I see entities like that are earthbound all the time. They're only measured by their life experiences, and that's why they're earthbound. Yet they don't have access to that higher ascension, ultimately crossing over to the other side and coming back as what we would perceive as a high level of knowing, a conscious access point to all things. And that would be then sort of representative of a guide per se that would be of use to you, as opposed to, you know, grandma's dead, but she's still, you know, is in the same state of smoking 5 packs of cigarettes and a bottle of gin every Sunday. And she's still angry and miserable and abusive because she never got out of her own way. And that was part of her own physical demise, embedding herself with this, embodying herself with these emotions. So yeah, no, I completely understand the Jin model. Where does that come from? Where are you referencing it?
I learned from dealing with people that had Jin in their life.
Okay. Yeah. Makes absolute sense. It's probably their favorite drink was gin. You know.
They're very, very dangerous beings, so I typically don't deal with them. So please don't come with me if you.
We don't want any clingers. Stage 5 clinger. Very good. Thank you so much.
So, you know, what's so interesting for me is you have your set belief systems in the Tao, and I have my set belief systems in what I've learned through spirituality. we have our own terminologies for certain things, but there's a lot of overlap, I'm noticing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
That's the thing that excites me, because there is no right or wrong way up the mountain. My perception is there's no right or wrong way up the mountain. There's the second you I just base it in this: the student is the teacher is the student. The second you lose sight of that, you lose sight of all things. And so you're reunited and it feels so good. And you're getting an angle, I'm getting an angle, and there's no wrong. It's just what is validated within this 3D reality that's repeatable. And then it solidifies more in your belief system as an understanding, because if you can't validate it, what is it? It's conceptual. It's just words. It's just a foofy sentence from something. I read it somewhere. Oh, they told me to do this, but it's not being able to be expressed in this dimension as a repeatable experience. And that's where that's the main thing that drives me is a repeatable experience, experiential knowing. Does that make sense?
Sure. Now, what I've learned from the ascended masters that I speak to, typically, there's like over 20 of them that will teach through the school. They say that there's an external field of influence. This is like the outside of your bubble, the outside of your Merkaba, perhaps. And then inside that, there is your auric field, and then your chakral field. Now, when information from outside of you is influencing you, like from the matrix, you might say, as it influences us, we decide, do I want this to become a part of me or not? Am I going to believe in this or not? And while we process that, it's in our auric field. But when we accept that this is truth, it enters into our chakral field, and then we can manifest that into our life. That's what we learned.
Yeah. It sounds kind of similar to a Taoist model. You know, the goal is to acquire the virtue over the emotion. So you basically manifest from a thought, feeling, and emotion. You generate the secret source that is taken from light wave, particle matter, however you want to. It's now manifested into an energy that has a vibration, that has a frequency that you resonate with. So now you have this emotion and a feeling that's attached to a thought, and it permeates the physical body. And when for the Taoist system, it enters the solar plexus, which we call the yellow court, and it sits there until it is given its directive of what organ it goes into. And then when it hits the organ, then it either will create and reveal the virtue or manifest into the emotion, which ultimately manifests into a physical distortion. So from the emotion being a distortion, so therefore creates a physical distortion, i.e. a deficiency in the form of some type of like physical ailment, if that makes sense.
If it's resisted though, right?
Well, if it's unresolved and you continue to heap it on, then it magnifies itself. It's just growing on more and more of the same. If you're not able to heal from it per se, or remove it. And I tend to not get into the semantics of whether grandma gave me 3 cookies when I was 5 and I got a glass of milk. It's an emotion. And I always remind people these are stories, and they have a thought and an emotion and a feeling attached. Wisdom is acquired when you remove the emotion and the feeling. And so then you have retrospect. Then you can acquire that event and go, oh, this happened, and now I can use this to advance my level of consciousness. But with the emotion and the feeling, it presents itself over and over again if you don't realize that this is also a distortion of your own creation from your emotional state, which derives from, the fear, generally speaking. And so that transmutes into subsections of many things. A dear friend of mine, Tom Campbell, is a NASA physicist, i.e., worked in Monroe Institute under Bob Monroe for 40, 60 years, something like that. Astro projection was his thing. He got deep into remote viewing, all that kind of good stuff. And even as a physicist, he had to rewire himself to go from being intuitively based 100% to learning how to be intellectual based. And then ultimately his whole life is from an intuitive state of consciousness. So he still runs most of his life, 99%, as an intuitive. And with that, that the first thing he always talks about is what is the entropy level to create this? Is it high or low? And if it's high, it's very distorted, and you're going to your passage, rite of passage, is going to be a little rough there. Whereas if the entropy level is low and it's not distorted, you're going to materialize this very moment, like right now. It's going to be yours. It's going to be now. It's going to be no obstruction, and you resonate at that higher level of consciousness. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I'm translating things through my own filters.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No. Absolutely.
And what I've learned is that religions, and I would say science is a religion. And their God is the atom, you would say.
Well, he's an exception, because he always reminds people that physicists don't know anything. And that's why he's so obscurely different, because he doesn't look at his theory, which he calls the theory of everything, my big toe, is predicated on a deeper intuitive understanding of how the probabilities are created from your intention.
But I think that's why he would be so blessed, because it's a very rare person that goes first into a religion or belief system so heavily, where you're programmed and coded to believe certain things. And if you don't believe this, then you're out of the club, kind of thing. But then to be able to ascend above it and to see it from a greater perspective, allowing you to see the world for how it actually is, rather than the lens, the rose-colored glasses, if that's the term.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I always remind people, if you dismiss someone else's belief system, you dismiss your own. So again, zero right or wrong ways up the mountain. It's like any way is the right way. The way, ha ha ha. Yeah. Is really up to you. Your path is the only realization. So you integrate this intuitive processes from your teachers, your ascended masters. Now, you're explaining sort of the degrees of inception of this information into your very knowing, from grades of like I don't know, I would call them sort of conscious shifts, really, that can be validated through auric fields, sampling of a tangible matter and energetic matter. When you use this stuff from a healing perspective, are you still framing out Reiki, or you found another system outside of that that's as efficient?
Yeah, I started with Reiki quite a while ago now, about 10 years ago or so, but it evolved quickly out of Reiki. Once I became a Reiki master, that's when it really transitioned into, this is not Reiki anymore. Throughout the process, I'm talking to their guides and I'm channeling their guides to give them a message. That happens very often. And I can see their galactic connections that they might have. I can see their past lives and alternate lives. I can see super soldier stuff. Yeah, there was a point where I was calling it Reiki, but I mean, it wasn't actually Reiki, because I was doing so many things that weren't Reiki anymore. And someone just told me, you can't be charging yourself for Reiki, because you're doing so much more. So that's kind of when I started to transition. But for me, the perception is essentially we have our smell, sight, taste, touch, and sound, right? Our physical senses. But on top of that, there's another layer. That's our clairs. So we have clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairtangency, clairgustance, clairempathy, all the clairs essentially. And these are other ways that we can perceive information. This is how we translate energies and information. So you said you're an empath and you're clairvoyant, and I believe you're a claircog as well, which is a clear knowing. You just know things. You can't quite explain how you know them. Clairvoyance is clear sight. You're able to see spirit, perhaps deceased humans and whatnot, or perhaps galactics and ores and things like that, and angels and stuff. And then empathy is feeling the emotions of the person that you're communicating with. Typically, you could feel all the emotions essentially, which is amazing because you can derive what's true from what's not true, whether it's in resonance with you or not. And empaths have the ability to be like human lie detectors, essentially. They can see past the masks that people wear. Even though we can be naive at times, still we can see through the bullshit, you might say. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a really good viewpoint. I always talk about the sensory perception. I put everything under that same blanket. People are like, well, what does that mean? Well, you start off with 5 senses that you know of, and they're like, okay, so what does that mean? It means that, okay, stop for a second. You're now hearing a word and you're saying it in your head and you're seeing it. There's 3 more right there. Hang on, now I have 8. Hang on a second. I have 8 senses. Well, really, you have as many as you choose to perceive. And it's about resonating at the ability from that energetic vibration frequency and resonating there so that it's real to you. It's valid. And that just comes from learning mastery from someone like yourself or myself, that you're able to acquire this skill set. And it's a skill. It's not something that I want to tell people. It's not something that's impossible for most people. If you come across someone that can teach you how to do this, it's very possible. It's possible for anyone, and it's also it starts from realizing that it is possible, and that's the first seed. Is that the sensory perception limit is up to you, in my opinion, from what I've observed. What are your thoughts on
that? I believe you're correct, and well, like in the beginning, for example, like when I was doing Reiki as a master, my clair abilities were quite weak. But the more you use them, the more you become aware. And the more you become aware, the more conscious you become. The more conscious you become, more of your soul says, hey, I want to play this game. So more of your soul comes in, and then you gain more stronger psychic abilities. And then you start doing more mission-based stuff in your life, which is helping people to understand, to provide them with new perspectives, or allow them to get unstuck if they're stuck somewhere in their life. And it's just awesome to be able to help people, with whatever they're stuck on. I think that's great.
Yeah. I mean, it really does come down to that, and it's just being evidence based. Realizing. It's like that attunement and being able to show someone something with their eyes open that would possibly, I had this woman earlier today, and she's into divination, using tarot cards and things of that nature, but in a much deeper level, it's a energy, frequency, and vibration, and so it's transmitting through her as a tuning fork to create the result. The cards don't just materialize. They're as much as you just think it's a deck of cards, it is not. It is a tuning fork, and the cards will come out specifically due to whatever is transmitting through you to create this divination. And so that goes for all things. When I do dowsing and things of that nature, I just use the energy. So when I use the energy, I don't use actual dows. I can read the energy. I can find vortexes and see them wherever they are. Normally, whenever I'm in the presence of someone and in their own space, like you personally have 14 vortexes in your house right now, all individual in their nature, and which is kind of crazy. And yeah, you get that charge right now. You're feeling it from your heart. You know that that's real. And when the thing I love using that is like, hang on a second, well, what are you talking about? And like I'll be like someone, Jane Doe, no one who knows anything, just that I was told I need to come and see you, and I'll get a healing, I'll get a spiritual awakening, whatever. And then I'll be like, so go and check this out. Go to your kitchen and go in front of your fridge, and you tell me what you experience. And they have zero evidence-based energy. They don't know what energy is. First and foremost, I switch on their energy body, which takes about a second. And then they go into it, they step into it, and they're standing on a fire hydrant. And they're like, what the is this? And it's like, That's just realized. You're just leveling up right now as something that's always been there, and now you have evidence-based reality. And it's always good because you do that, you identify with that, and then it's like, go away, do your thing, go eat a bologna sandwich, go down the street, get a coffee, go to work, come home, and you don't need to be sitting down in a lotus position, lighting 3 incense and calling in your guides, and you walk over to that portal and poof, it's there. And people are like, holy crap, this is real. Yeah.
You're starting to show your colors when you're talking about bologna sandwiches, you realize.
Yes, I love bologna sandwiches.
That's called Cape Breton steak here.
What's that?
Cape Breton steak, we call it.
Oh, right. Okay.
In Nova Scotia.
Yeah. But, this type of understanding is just a sensory perception,
For sure. Yeah. Everything is perception.
Mm-hmm.
But if your perception comes through a filter,
Mm-hmm.
like, for example, some religions are very restrictive. They use shame and guilt and fear to cause you to live a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't live that way, then, you're going to hell, right? Which is something that they create for themselves, essentially. And, well, I think you can be in hell while you're alive, actually, or be in heaven while you're alive, too.
Mm-hmm.
If you're surrounded by things that you hate and you hate yourself, then I think that's hell. And if you're surrounded by beautiful things and you like yourself, I think that's heaven.
Sure. I mean, within Taoism, we just call it duality. And ultimately, the journey of a Taoist is 2 sides of a mountain. One is yin, one is yang. You're going up the mountain to hit the peak, which is all things, the mother of all things, the Tao, the Wu Ji, which is the stillness between the breath in and the breath out. That is that realization. And when you embody all things, the present moment, anything is possible instantly. And it translates into a 3D reality from clearly a higher state of consciousness. But it's validated in what you would perceive as this mundane, dualistic duality that we speak of, where things are polarizing, where there is a yin and a yang, instead of being all-encompassing. So we master this internal alchemy from Nigong, which is internal power, inner power, and the subsection of that is being able to separate the electric from the magnetic, and realizing that the magnetic fluidity, that much deeper knowing, is the secret source, which some people will define as from a quantum model, the very new language that we speak of. They validate it within this idea that, it's called the 0 point. And within Taoism, within Taoism, it's a little different. We realize it within the internal alchemy, and you activate what you call the death of a star, the rising of the red phoenix within the middle dantian. There's 81 chambers of the middle dantian, and you realize that raising of the red phoenix that exposes the black hole energy. And people are like, whoa, that sounds ominous. Actually, no, it's not at all. When you understand that it's abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite, it's all things. And so the validation within a scientific model is, this is 0 point. This is the scalar frequency. This is the frequency that cannot be measured within this electromagnetic reality, because it's a merging of all things. It's beyond this measurable state that we speak of within duality. And so I've had, many students over the years using this energy. I teach them how to use it. And then all of a sudden they're like, one of them has a PhD and studied the nucleus of a cell. And he came back to me one day and he goes, I just had this research paper. I had to go and check out what was in the nucleus of a cell. And he goes, you wouldn't believe what I found. And I go, really? Tell me what? Black hole energy. And I'm like, I'm so glad. I'm so excited that you got to validate that for me. I mean, Taoists have done that for tens, hundreds of thousands of years. It really is, all bets are off, but intuitively this stuff. Just like go ahead.
I'm just thinking that, we've learned alchemy through the school as well. You said 5 elements. I would say
actually 81 elements, but we start with 5.
Okay. So we have fire, air, earth, and water, and the 5th would be void. So, yeah, I think it's quite similar, right?
Yeah, yeah, sure. I mean, absolutely. I mean, this is sort of like the 5 element a model would be related more to the physicality. So, the entry point to what you would call the void, which we would call the Wu Ji, is that the center point, the center of the center of the center,
Mhm.
which comes from here, not
Right.
here. Here is a
Right.
projector. Here is the gateway to all things.
Now, were you? I could feel that you were starting to talk about the Kundalini as well when you were talking about the energy channels that were running up through the body. We learned about something called the Dragon Force. This is
Mhm.
essentially the beginning and the end, the 1 and the 9, the Alpha and the Omega. But this is something that runs. It's a universal force essentially that creates and destroys all things like life and death, for example. It's very interesting to see the dynamics that exist between these two parallels.
Well, yeah, we call it the infinite Wuji body, which is sort of polarizing a Kundalini experience. And so you intertwine these energies and you activate what we call the sacred infinite flower, which is within the center
Third eye.
point. And
Okay.
so then you release in conventionally what we would call the sacred secret secretion, but
I've heard that.
it's kind of like I'm just referring to other systems, but in reality, it's the Wu Ji. And so the turning on of the universe within you is realized instantaneously. It's like the lights are on and you are basically a plutonium dump site of energy that never leaves you. And then you learn to master these dantians and really start moving it any way you want, whenever you want, however you want, and it's
Mhm.
transferable. So more infantile sort of processes would apply it to a form that would become sort of like physical, like a martial form, whether I teach someone Bagua, Tai Chi, Kung Fu, whatever. You can apply it to that contact point where you show someone how you remove their earthing, and with an inch distance between you and your subject, you throw them across the room, 10
Ah,
feet. So that's sort of like transferring the energy. And then, of course, application of if someone it's in contact with you, revealing the fascia, rolling down and expressing just the true nature of the magnetic fluidity. And then, of course, you connect with them and then twist and turn them into whatever direction you want using your mind as opposed to physically. So if someone puts their hand on you, you sink into that and then they go across the room. That type of stuff, which I've seen
cool.
so many charlatan rabesh on internet. It kind of gets funny. Well, it's actually quite funny. I like it. I like watching it because
It looks fake. It really does look fake.
well, in lots of cases it is. When you connect with that, you will know the very difference,
Mm,
and it's undeniable. And so that's also another degree that you could call, this idiomotor sort of like transmission that
mm,
starts with something as simple as someone just refining it as an intuitive thought response, muscle testing, however you want to read it, tarot
mm.
cards, dowsing, Ouija boards, pendulums, however you want it. You're getting a transmission. Now, how you do or what you do with that is another thing altogether, and that's where people come to yourself or myself to refine that mastery, to make it useful instead of like this glimpse of, oh, I had this moment, it was so profound, I can't repeat it, which seems to be the consensus of most people. Is they
Yeah.
start, they get what we call a taste, and they're chasing the dragon for the rest of eternity.
I think that happens with a lot of psychic abilities as well, though. People
Yes.
will astral project or have an out of body experience, or they'll see an aura for just a half a second and then they'll question what that was. I've always been interested in this energy transmission technique. When I was with the Bujinkan, it's essentially a ninjutsu school. Grandmaster will use those techniques with their techniques, and they kind of hide it. You can see that in the video recordings. They hide that they're actually doing this technique, But like deep down, he's saying like, I am you, you are me. And because I can move my energy, I can control your energy as well. I think Alexander Crackling, I might be mistaken with his name, but he also does a similar technique. So that's quite interesting.
Well, it's the present moment. So, you being so in tune with energy, it's like, you start off with the ground level bending of metal using your intention, attention. You create a little force, you focus on the middle point, and you watch it melt like butter as it transforms its state. This present moment, you will watch it wiggle and transform. And strangely enough, just with a little resistance as you put your attention to it, it goes boop. And people are like, holy crap. Well, whoa, what happened? Well, the next level of development with that state of consciousness is holding a spoon and melting it like a candle. And then what I call the graduating level is taking a fork and bending the prongs in either direction using your intention. And so these are different degrees, but in essence, they're the same as healing human flesh. It's the same thing. You watch it wiggle and shift before your very eyes as it transmutes back to its original form. You cannot do it. From my experience, this is just my experience. It's just what I know, what I teach people. I'm not telling you that there's no other way, because there are millions of other ways. But from my experience, the only way to obtain that is the present moment, and it's not being a place, person, or thing. You do not have title. You are just now. And that's how you sink into that, and you feel it. It's a consciousness. It can be transmitted. I've measured it in the EEGs. It's a brainwave. It's a gamma brainwave, quite frankly. It's really interesting. And, I get up to, between 100 and 200 hertz when channeling and doing anything that's related to healing. And then, when you're doing psychic stuff, what happens is your brain sort of shuts down. Strangely enough, when I measure it, there's like just pockets of just no activity. And the information is coming in when you're doing psychic stuff. And then it's a little different with mediumship, as you start to transmit different brainwaves and certain activities going on in the brain. But when you're in 100% high frequency for healing purposes, it's enveloping the whole brain. It's like oscillating, man.
I've never been hooked up to a machine before, but I would love to do that while I'm channeling. I think that'd be really fun.
Oh, I can tell right now what they're sharing with me. You're 100 and above, my friend. You're 100.
Is that good?
Well, 100 hertz, put it this way, up until about 10 years ago, on paper, it was known within the scientific community that only 2% of the population could even create a gamma brainwave, which was an actual falsehood in of itself, because what do you know? You know what you know, you don't know what you don't know. These days, now, a normal gamma brainwave you'll hit about 40 hertz and above, right? And that means you're enveloping the whole brain. That means you can go from gamma to alpha to theta to delta to epsilon, all in the same blink of an eye, and be eyes open. That's what consciousness really is. And so you are in that ballpark of 100 to 200 hertz. And that's just where you are. That's where you play. That's what you do. And you resonate that. You feel it up your spine right now. You know what's happening. It's real. You are able to resonate. That's that feeling.
I'd like to add something, because you just mentioned an interesting point. So when I'm teaching people how to use their abilities, I teach that there's the fight or flight mode, and then there's rest and digest state, or feed and breed, you might say. The central nervous system is the fight or flight, and the peripheral nervous system is rest and digest. You can't do psychic work when you're in the fight or flight mode. You have to be in the rest and digest state. And a lot of people can only do psychic ability stuff, or they'll only see spirit or be able to connect to spirit right after they wake up, right before they go to bed, while you're in the shower, or while you're having a poo. And these are the times when you take those deep breaths. It takes at least 3 deep breaths to get into the peripheral nervous system for most people. And as you relax into that state, that's when you do your ramp up, and then you can start doing psychic work. So for me, like before I start channeling, I'll always take several deep breaths, and then boom, I just enter into that state. But very interesting.
No, I think it's fascinating. Personally, Nigong's the main primary focus on Nigong is moving energy with your mind. So the mastery is operating in all dimensions at once. So you can access a brainwave state, which happens to be the byproduct of this level of consciousness at will. It's not necessarily what I do it a lot where people are like perplexed, but maybe that's why I've got the title of Sifu, Jiaofu, seafood teacher, perhaps. But, there is a level of mastery where I can give you the impression that I'm completely immersed in my emotions, and I'm not at all. And I'm able to create and manifest and cast magic healing in the same breath. Point in check, just the other day, this is an example of what I speak of. Got pulled over by the cops, had my kids in the car. You were speeding 10 miles over the speed limit. When the person was approaching my vehicle from behind, the police officer, I could instantly realize that he was highly anxious and had his hand on his gun. He was prepping himself to draw fire upon my family. It's like, wind the window down, because we've got an SUV and the windows were up, and I've got all my kids in the car, my wife. And he goes, license and registration, really sort of abruptly. And I'm like, my personality was like, I'm not really having that. So basically, in the same sense, it's like, is there any need or reason why you think you might want to draw your firearm on my family? And that just raised him up even higher, which potent anxiety, fear, and anger. Right. So with that, on face value, you would say, oh, Shifu, you're feeding your personality. You didn't go much. Well, I'd already diffused the whole thing in relation to dimensional shifts before he even got out of his car, proceeding towards my vehicle. So operating in that state of what you would perceive as an emotional state was a perception to an observer, but not where I was. I wasn't there. And so when he took the license and registration, and he walked back to his vehicle to write me a ticket, which was his exact words, he returned with, here you go, sir. I'm just giving you a warning, and you have such a beautiful family, and you have a nice day. And
he probably didn't realize how much anxiety and stress he has.
Well, that state of consciousness was altered, and I'd already cast the magic before he had even got out of his car. Yet on face value, there's all these different dimensional shifts that are taking place. Mm-hmm. And that is kind of the mastery that you get into when you're able to acquire this stuff, and it's just about making it repeatable. And you make it repeatable and repeatable and repeatable. But I always remind people, when you're emotional, you're suggestible. That's it. It's all done. It's over and done with. It's on like Donkey Kong, and alterations in that state of consciousness will be perceived by you as your own thoughts.
And as an empath, you have to be fully aware of your emotional state so that you can tell, is this mine? Or is it someone else's? Right?
Yes, that's a mastery. And so observer, what I call first person, third person, no person, that state right here is very easy to obtain from the way I train it. And, maybe I fell into it. Maybe I was the Michael Jordan of like metaphysics over 30 years ago, but it's never been something that has been an obstacle, because when you identify emotions are the distortion, as my dear friend, the Buddhist monk Martin would say, the dukkha, the distortion, it's really easy because it has its own energy, its own vibration, its own frequency, and you resonate with it and you move it aside as if you're moving an icon from your laptop. Move it over, sit, go in the corner, roll over, play dead. When I want to put on this underwear, I'll let you know. And that's a state where, holy moly, you are in the now. And so that's a real weird one, because as the universe, you're not asking yourself, hey, can you help me out with a healing universe? God, could you help me with a manifestation? Can you help me with this state? Because you're the one calling the shots. You're the now. You're right there. So if you think it will be realized. Does that make sense?
Sure. I'm just enjoying you talk. That's all.
Yeah.
Actually, things come to me and then they pass. They're like, oh, that opportunity passed. Another thought comes, oh, that opportunity passed.
Yes.
And there's like doorways into new branches of conversation, you might say, right?
Right.
Depending on where we slow down on the conversation.
Right. Yeah. Well, please, whatever the next doorway is, walk through it.
All right. I have something for you to chew on.
Yeah.
So one thing I've learned is that entities, because I've just removed a lot from people's fields, I've learned things over the years. Mm-hmm. they begin as ambient blobs of energy that just float around in our world, and they feed off of particular emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're feeling, let's say, jealousy for a period of time, then if it's a jealous entity, it will come up to you and it will start feeding off of that energy. But if you
Mm-hmm.
change your frequency, then they won't be interested in you anymore. It's just like a rat loves dirty spaces. A rat is an evil or dark being, but because of what it loves, it's often associated with gross, nasty, dark crap. But anyway, entities, when they feed off of this particular energy source, they become stronger and stronger. The longer that they're in your field, feeding off of that particular emotion. But typically they can't stay unless you have a depression where you're in a low frequency for a period of time. And that's when they can establish themselves in your field, which is when they start causing more and more problems because it gets stronger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I would fundamentally agree with that. Having basically been in participation of exercising or exorcisms in the hundreds over the last 30 years, one of the main fundamentals of Taoist practice of ritual is exorcism. So, identifying that stuff is really, very clear. And I always remind people that, all thoughts of your mind are not yours. Then
Right.
whose are they? They're not yours. They never
Yeah.
were.
That's something that a lot of people can't really comprehend, because we have your emotions that change your frequencies. Then we have your lower self, like your digestion, your gut. And there are other lower things as well that influence us. And then we have our guides. We have our higher self. We have higher dimensional beings that influence our thoughts. And you could even have a quantum entanglement to another you in another timeline that's influencing you as well. And if you have an entity in your field, they could totally fill your mind with thoughts. And if you're not able to differentiate between the voice of the entity and the voice of your guides, or your internal conversation, you might say, then you'll think that they are your guides, which can be a big problem. And if people are listening to a very dark being telling them that they're nothing, that they have no power, and they should just move away from these people that are helping them with their life, then that's when you should go get a clearing done.
Yeah. Definitely a yes for me on that. It's not so much this big purification. It's just basically greasing the wheels. Whenever I see someone that's possessed by a specific entity, all what you would call chakras are locked down, and there's no movement, and it's a very deep sort of very representative of the duality that presented itself to offer shelter to this very entity. It comes from that dualistic perception. And so when you bring that in and the chakras are locked, as you would say it, I call them energy centers, there is this sort of zero flow. There's no flow. There's no energy. So the energy is like literally stuck. It becomes stagnated. It rots like a rotten piece of fruit out in the sun. So you need to continually keep this flow that we call Wu Wei, effortless action, effortless effort, the flow, as Bruce Lee would say. And, you create that by lubricating the wheels within the energy centers, acquiring the virtue over the emotion, and just keeping them moving, keeping them rotating, and, condensing the energy, then expanding the energy, condensing, expanding, having it fluid, having it move through you. And there is no front to back. A lot of people tend to feel that. I've never seen that myself. It can access energy from any angle, and it can be vertical, it can be horizontal, it can be on an angle. It's all present at this present moment. And you just get that fluidity from, syncing yourself with, all things. That can be a practice, and that practice is really part of that. Normally when I go to sleep, go to night school, as you would call it, I will synchronize myself. And when I wake from my night school in the next day, my whole body feels like a leather mitt from a baseball mitt, because there's so much condensed energy that's infused into the cell itself. And I can't even squeeze my hands because there's so much energy. And that's just part of the replenishing and overflow that comes with turning this into a system. The architecture is there, it's present. It's not just a fleeting, transient sort of like, oh, I got a taste of it. No, you turn it into the internal alchemy, and the architecture is as tangible as this. And you can saturate it, you can pulpate it, you can move it any way you want, and then it transfers into the physical cell. So it's like longevity is part of the main drivers of a Taoist, is to create the longevity within this incarnation so that you can enjoy the fruits of your consciousness and take it as far as you can. Whereas, Buddhism, even though it's heaped in the same category, pain and suffering, this is a vehicle. Get rid of this avatar, get a new one. That's great for you, my friend, but Taoists don't perceive things that way. That's why we have records of, hundreds of year-old celestial masters over the last 6,000 years, now 10,000 beyond, 10, 20, 30, 50. I know it to be true. Taoism has been around for hundreds of thousands of years. And that comes from my direct teachers, Jade Emperor and the Yellow Emperor, Lao Tzu, Supreme Purity, Jade Purity, Highest Purity, Ling Bao. These are all just subsections of consciousness and the access point. I just finished transcribing a 2024 version of the Tao Te Ching with Lao Tzu. It took him basically my ability to stay awake. So about 24 hours we created, and that's normally how I receive information. If I don't sleep, I don't stop getting information directly from source. So it's like, if someone would attribute it to, what is it, automatic writing? I don't do automatic writing. I hear and see Lao Tzu as clearly as I see you, and I hear him as clearly as I hear your voice. And we sit down and we have a chin wag, as you would put it in Australia, and have a conversation, and he relays information to me directly, instantly, and you get what you get. And I mean, this particular Tao Te Ching will be earth-breaking for most, because people being the most translated scripture in history, there's a lot of jilted, distorted dukkha, as Martin would say, within the translation of the Tao Te Ching that I've seen personally.
I'm curious about the Yellow Emperor. I've learned that they're an Arcturian. They were Arcturian. Arcturians are very conscious, galactoid being, you might say. And Lao Tzu is actually one of the teachers of the school as well. So that's very cool.
Now, that's interesting that you refer to the Yellow Emperor, because his story is quite clear when I go over it. He came down from the skies on a celestial dragon to planet Earth. It's like a really crazy knowing. And then he spent 18 days magnetized to the Earth's field, where he could not move, no food or water of any kind, as he transmuted into a physical form, and then was downloaded the infrastructure of basically Chinese culture as we know it.
Wow,
and that's been implemented. And so, I'm what's that?
Arcturians are amazing beings.
Yeah. I mean, and so it's interesting because I'm just in the midst of interviewing all of these guys to put this information in a celestial book in great detail, because Lao Tzu's realization from his physical form to his celestial immortal representation, which is supreme purity, is part of the three magical realizations of what we consider the highest ascension thus far, being transmuted as the Tao, because they're the three creators of the cosmos. So highest purity, jade purity, and supreme purity are the entry and creation and evolutionary points of the cosmos as we know it. And so then they transmute into The sun is supreme purity, the earth is jade purity, and the moon is highest purity. So that is the light. This is the information, and the lower dantian is the magic. It's the energy. So when we go through degrees, so when we go through degrees, it's matter, qi, shen, wuji, dao. And so there's actually 4 more, because we have 9 stages of heaven to access that point.
So we teach magic in the school, and where we harness the magic. So essentially the concept is, in higher dimensions, things manifest faster than they do in lower dimensions. And so anything above the 3rd dimension manifests faster than it would here. And anything below the 3rd manifests slower than where we are. We essentially reach up to grab higher dimensional energy, and we harness it in our root chakra, which is where they say magic is, which is awesome. And then we fill up our root chakra, which grounds and balances any chaotic energies that might be in it. And as that energy trickles up into our higher chakras, or energy centers, as you refer to them, we can release that using something called a spell, which is essentially intention and will to what you want to manifest into this world. And then it's amplified by the magic that's released with the spell.
No, I love it. I love it. I would bring your attention a little bit more. When I say lower dantian, that is not an energy center per se. It's the energy center went within these 3 dantians. There are subsections. We make up 9, but these are like center points to all things. So highest purity resides in the lower dantian. Supreme purity resides in the upper dantian. Jade purity resides in the middle dantian. Now, the lower dantian is above the root chakra. And it's
just below the belly button, right?
It's behind the belly button, and you can palpate it. I mean, if you want, I can sample the frequency for you. And it's a density. It's like it's 81 different chambers within that, as there is 81 chambers in this and 81 chambers in that. And so you have this, incredible density that you call on and pool on. So it's a little slightly different, but the same. I mean,
I think you mentioned the root chakra while you were telling me that story. That's what I was picking up on.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it can transmute into anything that you choose it to, as you sample it and make it real. It has to be real. But the Nigong definitely puts the validation meter out there very quickly. So, a lot of people tend to get caught up in the first person situation. So their energy is being cultivated outside of the actual center point, the center of the center of the center. So in some teachers would call it the false dantian, because it's not sitting in the center of the center. Now, it all comes down to when you slip that dantian into place, into the cavity of the pelvis, it's like a washing machine. It's undeniable. It's not something that it's just no. It's a washing machine that doesn't turn off, and you just turn it up however you want, turn it down however you want, and you cultivate. So if you're visualizing this for all the people at home or anyone listening, imagine going to Home Depot and you get a gallon of paint and you hand it to them, and they have that machine that shakes the paint back and forth. That's what happens when you harness that energy within the dantian, and it never leaves you. It's sort of like, and it's the same with the middle dantian and the upper dantian. There's mechanisms within it that evoke this system, vibratory frequency that's transmitted that synchronizes with all of them, making it possible for you to, whatever you choose to. It's Hogwarts School of Magic at this point.
I have never consciously tapped into these 3 fields you were talking about. I may have passively throughout my practice or whatnot, but and masculine and female energies and balancing this hasn't been my field of focus. So I'm a bit out of my element when it comes to the knowledge when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah. I'll listen now that you've heard about them. You're going to sit back here just for the audience. David's going to get a little sample and go off to the races and disappear, get high as a kite, and go, oh, I might have to integrate something like that, whatever my teachers tell me to, into the very mastery that I already have. I'll just add it to it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and that's really, you know, how it can be, as simple as that sort of realization.
I have a curiosity.
Sure.
The dragon, the golden dragon behind you,
Mm-hmm.
does that being have a name, or does it come with a resonance?
Yeah, I mean, it's Ra.
Ah, the sun god.
Right. Yeah, its definition is that, but it's different than something that would be identified more within a sort of Egyptian like based ideal.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. I've spoke to Ra before, and they're a beautiful being. They're with the Galactic Federation of Light, and they know a lot of stuff.
Yeah. No, I mean, doing this over 30 years consciously, I got to tell you this, and this is really interesting, is every time I look at someone's auric field and I just watch the shape shifting of specific influences, spirits, entities, energies, whatnot. Never more in the last 30 days. Oh, sorry, no, excuse me, 12 weeks have I seen more full-formed aliens than ever before. It's wild.
That's good.
It's mind-blowing to me because, you know, I've been in the world and realm of spirit communication for 30 years, and I go deep on that all over the place, no matter what it is, whether it's a feng shui, house clearing, an exorcism, healing, channeling, mediumship, clairsenses, whatever. Never have I seen that many aliens. They're like, it's a fire sale going on here.
That's my life.
It's
like when I relax very deeply, I enter into like telepathic bandwidths essentially, and I can interact in collective consciousnesses of a certain species. And I think that's amazing that that's happening for you, because I wonder, I mean, you're a generation essentially ahead of me, or ahead or behind, depends on your perspective, I guess, but like you're a bit older than me, and that comes with programming as well.
It's more, it's not really, perhaps you could call it programming. It's just what's there. So I'll work with whatever is in that person's field. Like, you know, on a daily basis, it could be JC, and the variable of JC could come in the form of something very sort of like archetype realization, almost a caricature to physical vivid images. Depends on what's related to the individual. And before this time, these type of like entities were not as present. Like, I mean, I just, have you ever heard of a woman called Dolores Cannon?
Yeah.
She was in my ear about 4 weeks ago for 6 weeks straight. Okay. Completely rambling on about her issues with how people roll out her system.
QHHT.
Yeah, there's 5 stages to her system, and she's saying they're missing 2 of them, and this is why the actual subject is not going into what they call a somnambulistic state, a deeper state of consciousness that is unconscious. Right. And so people are just attributing it to, oh, well, you know, everyone's conscious more, so they don't have to go that deep and the information just comes. And she's like, no, these people are just not applying it the way that I showed them. They've decided that it's about, and so the tapping in of information that she got from what she calls the consciousness, the superconscious, something of that nature, is not the same. And I find that really interesting. And when she gave me this conversation, she kept in my ear. And then this other person that she was hanging out with, which I didn't realize until later, was this guy named Art Bell. I don't know whether you've heard of this guy.
No.
And he had a radio station talking about paranormal activity and aliens out here in Vegas, in Nevada. It's called Coast to Coast. And it's like he's been doing that. He had been doing that for 20 years before his passing, or maybe 30. And so it's like really, you can't even make this stuff up. And then when she went on, I had to validate. I'm a very much a validator. I hear you. It's like you telling me, hey, look, I can levitate. Until I see it, it's words. And I can see you, and I want to see it. And so when it's just as though I have a conversation with Dolores, I'm like having a conversation. That's great. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to validate it for myself. Now, whether I can do it instantly, which is 99% of the time, or maybe I dig a little deeper and Lao Tzu goes, hey, go and check this out. I'm like, okay. And I go and look it up and I'm like, whoa, you can't, this is my own shift of consciousness. You can't make this stuff up. It's like undeniably mind blowing that this in, just the same as Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee came to me about 6 months ago, and I did a 2-part series on his confession in the curse that plagued his very family, that took his life, and his first child was completely related to his inner weaving and his dismissal of his Taoist teacher and the fundamental fear that was left with his integration with an entity that gave him the ability to acquire the attention of the world. And through that, he had to surrender certain things, which was giving the access to all the people that were listening to his very message. And he refused to surrender to that entity. And the entity's answer was, well, that's fine. You're going to be a legend, but you're not going to be alive. And it was like, you're not going to have a physical form that is now.
Mm.
And it was mind-blowing. And when you watch it, you're like, holy crap, you feel it, just like David knows what I'm talking about, and you validate it to be real.
Just to go back to your Dolores Cannon thing, why the generation, it changes after a few generations, just like the telephone game. It's no different in Reiki as well. I think the original teachings of Reiki are maybe not completely different, but it's I'm going to say completely different from its original source material. And I mean, I don't know how many generations of practitioners there are in Reiki, probably like 20 generations or something now. And if you go to a practitioner of like the 7th generation, even from Yusui, it's going to be different material that you're going to learn about. So it's really watered down. Everyone wants to add their own little bit of fire or flair here, or their own symbol. That's just how things change. I think the same thing happened with the Bible, and maybe it happened with the Tao Te Ching as well. I don't know.
Well, I mean, Lao Tzu always speaks on, the idea or understanding of the greater nature of all things, that you are, basically a human is a grain of sand asking the beach, what are you doing today? And when you fall back into the beach and you become one with all things, then everything is realized as soon as you come to that epiphany. Otherwise, noted, you are trapped in the mind prison of the simulation of your humanness. And with that comes the trappings of that very limited perception. Moreover, that's kind of like how, we speak on it within the Tao Te Ching. Let the man who's never left his village, let him know he's seen the world, because everything is in here. You don't have to go anywhere for it. It's all yours for the taking. And so degrees of variables, the teaching I've teach people in the mastery of clairsenses or anything of that nature has not changed within Taoist practices for thousands of years. It's just got stronger, because what happens is the more people that invest their very imprinting into the mastery, it becomes pliable. It's like driving down the highway on a rainy day and you want to stay in the tracks of the car in front of you so that you are not braking or slipping on the actual surface. It's the same thing with this. Once it's imprinted, you feel the palpability of it. It's kind of like when you read the Tao Te Ching, you're like, holy crap, it's raising hairs at the back of my neck. I have no idea why, yet it's been going on for thousands of years, and that resonates with you. And moreover, from the scientific perspective, when we discovered the DNA strand back in the 60s, and holy moly, there's more than just flesh and blood. We're taking it down to a subatomic particle level that goes beyond all things, and there's a gene expression there. Oh, what is that? Oh my goodness, that means that things can be altered, and they can be altered with your intention, attention. And that in of itself is sort of the fundamental understanding of epigenetics and that DNA strand. Moreover, the discovery of what we call the God gene, maybe back in the early 2000s, where they go, "Oh, we've deciphered the code within a DNA strand using the periodic table." I'm like, "Oh, what in Tao's name gave you the idea to even do that?" Intention, of course, clearly intuitive senses brought them to that point. They deciphered the code, and what did it say? You probably know what it said, but I'll just tell it for the audience. God. What is it? God in this body or something like that. God, I think it was like God embodied in this. It was pretty much like God entrained in this body. And you're like, how the hell did that end up there? And of course, when you understand how to imprint things, you can alter people's DNA at will. So that can change the coding, which makes you resonate to things, thoughts, feelings, emotions, numbers, letters, symbols, words. They're all integrated into your DNA, and that's what makes you gravitate to stuff. And of course, if you imprint it in with the magic, it changes the very structure. Yep. I mean, that's how it works. You do it, but you do it at a more concise sort of focal point sort of level where you can do it as you master it. It becomes easier and easier to get there instantaneously. And that's why, for me, when I listen to Dolores, it's like, Psalm Embleistic is great, but it's like, I mean, you can get deep into that. It takes me about a second to take someone into an epsilon state of brainwave, and healing is just the side effect of your reality. And that's in the same spoken word of hello, take a deep breath, good night. And that's just a state of awareness, and you're attuning. Your resonation is already there. You can't. It just is what it is. They resonate, and people are like, "But you didn't do anything. You're just talking to me." If I had a penny for how many times I've witnessed those type of healings, where they come to me and they have a conversation. They're like, "Oh, and I had this issue. I've got this torn ligament in my knee," and I'm like, "Okay." Anyway, so what did you get up to today? And they're sitting there looking at me because they got a referral or something. They're like, I'm having a conversation with them. I'm like, "Oh, so you like, Kung Fu movies. Great." And 20 minutes goes by. Well, this all took place in the first 10 seconds, but 20 minutes goes by and they're like, "No offense, but I was here because I've got this issue and I'd really like you to see if you could help me." And I'm like, "It's already done." And they're like, "What are you talking about? We haven't done anything. We've just had a conversation for 15, 20 minutes. It's already done." I have a pain in my... Oh. I'm like, stand up, jump on it, run around, do whatever. How is that? And how is that possible? And they're like attempting to defy the fact that there is no ache, there's no pain. They've got complete mobility. It works again as it should before it was distorted. And they're like, "What in Tao's name is going on here? You came here for this." It just so happens I like entertaining myself with conversation. We don't need to get down to the semantics of the energy, and it just happens. And people go, "Whoa!" And I'm pretty sure that you obtain that same level of frequency, and you show people this on a daily basis.
So I don't find it exactly from the conversation, but I mean the conversation is as you provide a new perspective to someone's life, that is healing, of course. That can allow them to have less resistance to something in their life, which can clear the chakra.
Sure. I mean, I just go heal. That's it. That was like literally my first entree into the what do you call it? The hit from the doobie, the crack pipe hit, whatever you call it. I was addicted 30 years ago, and the first thing I saw was gangrenous flesh transmute back to pink flesh color in 40 minutes.
That's pretty impressive.
I'm done. I'm addicted. I'm like, and internally, my dialogue with Lao-Tzu at the time was, "We need to rush this person to the hospital." And Lao-Tzu's like, "No." I'm like, "Well, in what am I going to do? We're going to watch this healing." And I'm like, "Sure we are." And that was it for me, because it was like the second time I really witnessed something. The first one was, a woman's ankle was the size of a watermelon. It shrunk down and reformed itself, and she was standing on it in 30 seconds. And so it's a frequency. And I do this all the time. Every day is like an event like that. Oh, my kid tackled another kid and they ate dirt, and they get up and they've got a swollen lip the size of a baseball. Poof, heal, 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 boom, gone. And you're like, what the f? Because you watch it. The thing that I love about this is watching the transmutation of it. And that's the validation. That's the stuff that goes, yes, this is where I need to be. Yes, I see it. And from a Tom Campbell perspective, we call this, low entropy, a level where there's little to no distortion, which makes it possible.
I've learned that the blockages are because there's resistance in a certain area of the chakra. So, for example, if someone has something wrong with their wrists, their hands, their elbows, their shoulders, or their heart and lungs, and even the middle of the back, then that's related to the heart chakra. So that it's likely emotional trauma or something that they're holding on to that needs to be released. But yeah, typically I've experienced from removing psychic constructs from people's fields, this removes pain from their field. So blockages, entities, these create pain because your body is telling you to look here to remove it. And once you remove it, then the body doesn't need to manifest pain anymore. So that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I kind of cheat a little bit because I've been doing it a while. Maybe it's an old generation. I can do it in a fraction of a second, and that's just the state of consciousness. I don't actually process what I call the semantics. It's like it's the state right now, the present moment, which comes with no title, no place, no person, no thing. And that's the only way I've learned the highest level of consciousness that you can obtain these sort of, dimensional shifts. You cannot get into the semantics. And there's always a processes of learning, your intuitive understanding, development of what these are, how they work, what they do. But when you get in that present moment, I'm you, you are me, we're all one. I don't look at the computer screen. I don't look at the computer. I don't define something as a cup, as a bottle. It's now. And that's where you feel it. And that's why some of the most benign incantations that I have are heal, 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 because I'm the universe. So that's exactly what you do. Is if I say it, it is so. It is realized. And that's kind of like the attunement. But I completely agree with you. There are subsections of all these things, and they all start with a certain way of understanding that how does it transmute to this point, if you know what I'm saying. Does that make sense?
I think that I'm still coming around to that. I've been awake for like 10 years, but I'm not at the end of the path. You know what I mean?
No, there's no end.
Yeah.
No end.
Yeah, that's another thing. It's completely infinite, like a Mobius strip, I've learned. And yeah, shit.
Yeah.
I'm lost in thought.
Oh, well, I just agree with you 1,000,000% on everything that you've said in relation to understanding the mechanisms. And they transmute themselves into an emotion that then filters down into a physical element. And all these things are very relevant and very important as pieces in the puzzle to help someone acquire an understanding of how to give someone a solution to whatever it is that they bring to them. And and without question, I'll repeat it over and over again, it's a system. And so it's important that you understand these things, that it is a system, and that the concentration of your awareness is just part of the mastery. You become more and more refined, and it becomes more and more instant to a point where you think it and it's realized. And that's that attunement, that frequency. And that's all. I mean,
it's almost like in the beginning, you need to, I say, like you're like a caterpillar. You need to consume all of the knowledge that exists essentially in the field of your interest.
Right.
And then you enter this like chrysalis state where you like perhaps go through a depression, or you're releasing tremendous amounts of trauma and whatnot. Then you become the butterfly. And then you become, and the butterfly is like you're sharing information with people that are caterpillars. And then after the butterfly, you think that's the end of the cycle, but then you become the monarch, which has to do with sovereignty and learning and really taking care of yourself and taking care of your people and taking care of your family. And then you get into the higher states like demigod, and then eventually godness, knowing that you are a part of the creator, or you are the creator of your very reality. And then nothing really matters. It gets all reduced down to, well, this is the now, and heal, heal, heal. And that's all you need to do. But if someone asks you, how do you do that? You can't just like quickly explain, I opened up this massive path in my life and I learned a billion things about myself and I've healed a billion things about myself. And then I've come to the single conclusion that I'm capable and I can do it if I say it. I can.
Yeah. No. I mean, I will say that I did a little cheating because of my past lives, at least the last 100, as specific Taoist immortals and Taoist teachers, priests, alchemists, and it's just repeatable. So the first experience I had 32 years ago was that of, I literally read off a script of how you distant heal through my priest training, and the end healing incantation was heal, heal, heal. And that's what happened. And
that's
so
the reductive part I was talking about.
Right. And so it was literally that quick. But of course, there was mechanisms and things that I went through in here as the processes of the actual connection for distance healing. But when I got hooked, and that was the first time I did it, and I was like, I went out of class the first day, and I was like, I'm just not gonna, whatever. This is interesting. I like this. This is conceptual. But I didn't have any basis of it. I wasn't like going, oh, yeah, this is real or not real. I attribute my consciousness to taking things at face value and being childlike in my nature. And so I looked at it and went, okay, well, the event came up that same day where I was talking to someone on the phone and they were supposed to meet me. And they said, oh, no, I can't meet you. I've swollen I rolled my ankle and I've swollen it the size of a bowling ball. And I'm like, okay. Oh, well, that's too bad. And I'm in another thought because I just finished this training and I was like, oh, no. And she was about to get off the phone. I go, wait, stop. She's like, what? Let me try something. Right? I literally, that's it. Simple as that. And now technically, if you're into neuro-linguistics, try would be a word of admission of failure. Now, I wasn't processing that at that level of linguistics at that point, but I just said, let me try this. So I had no knowing at that moment, not consciously in this lifetime as at present moment, but I was about to get a conscious wake-up call. And so I said, look, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to go through this list of things. She said, what are you doing? I was like, look, I can't see you. I'll see you next week. What are you doing? I'm like, I went through the list and I said, now I'm going to just repeat this a couple of times. Don't think anything of it. And you just tell me what happens. And so literally like Harry Potter, I went through the list. And then at the end, I went heal, 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 heal. And the words were, what the fuck? She screamed it through the phone. And I'm like, what's going on? What the fuck? And I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, my ankle shrunk before my very eyes and I'm standing on it right now. And I'm like, you're full of shit.
Take a picture.
I got in the car. Well, she took a picture beforehand because her mother's into like energy healing and stuff like this. Took a picture beforehand, then took a picture after. And I'm like, whoa. I got over to her house, right? And this is like something out of a Harry Potter movie. Very affluent people, a lot of money. The mother doesn't believe in doctors. They're very much in the mindset of her idea of health and wellness is a pack of cigarettes and a bottle of vodka. So she would sit in her to do sort of home, well-to-do with endless amounts of money, and she's sitting there puffing away. And I get through the door. I'm like, what's going on? And my friend is standing there. She's just a big smile on her face. She just runs up to me and gives me a hug. And it's like, what is going on here? I mean, this is ridiculous. Show me the photos. And I went, what the f-? And the mother goes, she's smoking. And I'm like, and I'm just thinking, what's going on? And she goes, I always knew you were a healer. And I'm like, what the hell does that even mean? I freaked out. And then next minute, she's making an appointment with me. I said, I've got a foot pain. I want you to take a look at it. I'm like, dude, No offense. I'm the janitor at McDonald's at this point. I don't know what you're talking about. You're going to come and see me. And this is when the next event was, where she couldn't see her own feet. Distended stomach. I mean, she drinks booze all day long, smokes cigarettes. She hates doctors, fears doctors, doesn't want anything to do with doctors. And so money is the only thing that keeps her going, right? So she has maids and all the rest of it. And so she's never looking at her feet. So I get there the following day and I pull her sock off and I almost die, my friend. It's
gout.
It's gangrenous. It's like you need to amputate. I don't even know what to even define it as. I'm just looking at this going, she's like, yeah, so what's going on down there? I feel a little discomfort. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, what the
She must be diabetic and can't feel it.
Oh, all of it, all of the above. And she's sitting there and I've got Lao Tzu in my ear going, no, we're going to heal this. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm literally, we need to get this woman in a car to the hospital right now. And it was like, no, you're going to sit here and watch this. And she's like, so what, why don't you do your thing? And I'm like, what thing? What do you, and Lao Tzu was in my ear. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is going to be really bad. And I sat there for 40 minutes and watched it transform back to pink. And I'm like, I'm hooked. I am hooked. I will never. I was addicted. I was like, this is unreal. And of course, my favorite hobby would be popping like sebaceous cysts that people have under their skin, like the big golf balls or things of that nature, where they raise to the top and you watch the skin flesh open up and pus pours out. I remember distinctly this one woman who had one on her breast the size of a baseball. And you just watch, you feel the palpable energy. You know what I'm talking about. And you literally, I watched it raise to the top of her breast, the skin separated and pus poured out, looked like a liter. Both of us were like freaking out. And then it sealed back up. And I'm like, this is crazy stuff, man. And the woman's like, thank you. And I'm like, no, thank you. This is unreal. This is beyond my comprehension. And having a conversation with Tom Campbell, the physicist, and he's like, you know what? I've experienced miracles very similar to this. And I'm like, oh, so I'm not the only one. And it's like, this is the kind of state that you get in. It's a no place, no person, no thing state. And that empty, that void, as you speak on, the Wu Ji, the stillness, all things, when you get there, all bets are off, my friend. And you get the palpability. You transmit what I've measured as the brainwave, and it's on like Donkey Kong, and you can repeat it just like you feel all the things that your sensory perception, all your developmental skills over years of training has created this ability. And, that's just part of it. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's amazing. I actually have my story's not so palpable, I guess, as the pustules coming out.
Yeah.
But essentially, I had a similar experience, but less, let's say, visceral than that experience. Yeah. And like I was doing Reiki as a Reiki master at the time. When I was told this isn't Reiki anymore, and I had my hands on the client's head, several hand positions, and she's like, David, what does it mean to see a tiger staring at me, like right in front of me? And I was like, do you normally have like visions of anything? And I wasn't very awake at the time either. And she said, I've never seen a vision in my life. I don't even have like internal conversation in my mind. And I said, must be the Reiki, is what I said in the beginning. And I said, come back like in a couple of weeks' time and maybe we'll try something similar. I'll work on your back. And she came back, and the next time she came, she had another vision. And I was like, what the hell's going on? And then I worked on another client not too long after that, and they had a vision as well. And that was my confirmation, because what was happening was I was using all the Reiki symbols in the beginning. And then one day I heard this voice say, stop using the Reiki symbols. And then I was like, well, how am I going to do energy healing if I don't use the Reiki symbols? But anyway, I trusted the voice, and I put my hands on the client the same way because I didn't know any other way. And that's when they started to have the vision. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's palpable. All this stuff is tangible, and I would like to remind people on the channel, anyone that's listening to this, you can realize it instantaneously. There's no limit to that. That can be obtainable to you right now. And so, it's it's just the stuff that we realize. And for me, it's just what I experience. I teach people how to do this. They experience the same thing. And it's like the side effect. It's a frequency. That's it. And you resonate with it. When you
Mhm.
resonate with it, you obtain it. It's just the way, a lot of these people sell manifestation and things of that nature. Everything's an energy. Everything has a vibration. Everything has a frequency. If you can resonate with that frequency, then you can obtain it. That's
Right.
it. That's it.
I'm curious just of mindset when you're doing the healing. I know you say heal, heal, heal in your head essentially,
Mhm.
but are you perceiving it in your consciousness as already being healed, or do you watch it heal itself essentially? As
I don't get even caught into the semantics. I watch it with my eyes as just this instant healing, but I don't get caught into the semantics of it has to be a specific way or look at it. I can see all the energies behind it and everything else, but it's like literally I've got no, as you would call it, skin in the game. There's
so Lao
nothing.
Tzu is just essentially telling you to be present in the now, and then you just watch.
It's just now. It's just now. It's like I don't. It's not even. I know it's Latsu, but it's like it's not even. I don't even have to think about Latsu, the universe, anything else, anything. It's just this moment right here.
Hmm. Is
And
he your primary guide?
he's my teacher. Yeah, I channeled him 32 years ago, and that was like an epiphany from my teacher because he literally was like, "I've done this for 60 years. I've never done what you just did." And I don't know what is that? Because when I channeled Latsu, it was a surge of energy and heat that went
Hmm.
through my whole physical body. Everyone in the room was standing around me with marshmallows, cooking their marshmallows. It was that higher transmission.
Right.
And when he's around because my transmission right now is that of that. And you can feel the heat in your body. You can feel it starting to percolate and oscillate because that's what he does. He just transmits. And so when you just observe it, you're like, holy crap. Whew, it's nuts. And when he's present and what he's doing. And it's just like it's the now.
I haven't had the opportunity to be around too many channelers, unfortunately, in person. Some of them, but not while they're channeling. But I've heard people tell me stories about when they've been around me while I was channeling, and that they feel like, oh my gosh, there's so much energy that they almost have to. I was at this like medieval festival essentially where there's like jousting going on and stuff. And this is the first time I had ever channeled, and I was in the trance state of channeling uh, Methuselah. I thought it was my higher self at the time. Anyways, a shit show. I'm dressed up in like my leather pants and my tunic, essentially, and a sword belt on, and somehow I get there alive. I get to it's like a Center 200, an arena, and Sarah, my student at the time, she says, "David, like your energy is just too much. I have to like sit 2 seats over from you."
Mhm.
And her mother asked me a question, and Methuselah answered her like the most bold, straightforward answer, and it was not softened at all. Like I would normally soften my words, of course, some anyway, but he was just blunt as hell. But it was exactly what she needed to hear in the moment. You know what I mean? Channeling is so interesting, and I do enjoy it, but I'd like to do more in-person stuff with people, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, really, I would say most of the time my spoken word is directly related and coming from him. But I like to take a moment and sort of do that. If you go through my channel, there's many transmissions from Latsu. You can sit down and watch one, and you go, "Oh, holy crap, that's a lot of energy." Yeah, I mean, that's what he does. He brings it. He
Mhm.
brings it, and it's present, and it transmutes into any form. It doesn't matter whether you're in front of it physically or you're at a distance. You're watching it digitally. It's undeniable, and it's palpable in its nature. And you're just like, "Whoa, okay." And sometimes he's quite colorful in his perception of things, but it's always pretty much in a maternal state of sharing and healing and teaching. And you can get a healing just from watching one of his transmissions. It's like, whoa, okay, I'm in, I'm good. And for someone like yourself, you just attune to that, and you start acquiring that resonation, and then it's yours for the taking, my friend.
Yeah, he's great. Interesting. I'm curious, do you speak light language as well?
I've seen it. I don't really speak it specifically. I've seen it. I resonate with it when people are speaking it, but I don't necessarily speak light language. One of my dear friends, he speaks a lot of light language, and you just understand it, even though you don't understand it. It's like a weird. And then, of course, he'll translate it into whatever it is that he's saying into English, but you feel the resonation.
Not many people can translate and speak it, so that's pretty awesome for your friend. Is this the physicist?
No, he's another buddy of mine that is right into the Galactic, Federation and all this kind of good stuff, and he's deep into, the whole realization of all these different beings that are coming in from all these other planets, and it's all good stuff, man. I mean, it's just there is no end.
When I mentioned earlier the generational thing, I didn't mean that as a poke or an insult.
No.
But let's say, what's your age?
52.
52. Yeah. So maybe you would be put in a crazy home if you came out talking about aliens when you were a young kid, right?
Well, when I was in my 20s, I would just call myself a priest, and I do exorcisms, and people look at me like, what? And it never fazed me. I was never concerned by the judgment of others. All the people that were labeled, 3 cents short of $1 would end up on my doorstep looking for answers. And they were not happy with the diagnosis of mental illness or some type of psychotic episode or anything of that nature. They knew that intuitively there was something more.
Right, like a brain imbalance or chemical imbalance.
Sure. I mean, that would have been the general consensus back in the day. But now, it doesn't even go that far for most people. They realize they can find someone like yourself, myself, to help them realize who they are.
Yeah, it's shocking how many people that are in crazy homes probably just have an entity problem, or perhaps they're stuck perceiving an alternate reality, or they're stuck in another dimension and they can't physically ground or psychically ground their energies enough to exist with everybody else. So they're seeing like two realities at the same time. I think that happens with probably half the people. I haven't took a tally, but half of it's probably brain chemistry, or like part of the brain isn't grown enough, and part of it is probably more of a psychic nature.
Yeah, without question. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
My goodness, look at this void of time and space. We're right there, my friend.
Yes,
we're having a lot of fun here. I want to. I think in closing, I want to talk to you about just any more insight that you want to share, because I mean, I want the audience to understand the type of mastery that David is sharing with us today, and that you're going to see all his social under this video, and of course, in a moment here, I want him to share with the audience what he's offering in relation to 101s, training, teaching, all the things that he brings to the Conscious Collective. And in closing, I want to ask you, what's your definition of consciousness?
I was just going to say, do you want to hear about consciousness before I leave?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So back in the day when I was a Reiki master, I was attuned by this man named Bruce Whittier, and he did my Reiki master attunement, but he also did a Christ consciousness awakening ceremony on me. I had no idea this was going to happen. And when this happened, he had like this crystal grid beneath me, and there was a crystal in the center, and I seen this lightning bolt strike the crystal. And then the crystal went into my heart, or the lightning bolt went into my heart. And then from that moment forward, I could see consciousness. I could see numbers above people's heads that say people's consciousness levels. So everything for me, when I see someone, I see their consciousness levels. And I know that I can talk about psychic stuff with this person because their conscious levels is over a certain amount, or I'm not supposed to talk to this person because they're not conscious enough to comprehend this. So I've looked at people from all around the world, through YouTube, of course, and pictures and whatnot. And I've noticed a trend and a pattern. And this is a little bit complex and a little bit long, if you still want to hear it. But
Yeah.
so one thing I've noticed is that humans begin at the third dimension, obviously, but 3.0, 3.1, 3.2, this is typically people that are tribal. So people that are still hunter-gatherers, maybe in Africa, or maybe somewhere in Australia, or perhaps in Brazil, or something of this nature. But as you go up in consciousness, so 3.1 is 10 times brighter than 3.0. So it goes up as an order of magnitude in greatness, so 10 times greater for each 0.1. So when people are around 3.4, they're very basic, I'm going to say NPC people. They go to work, they come back, they watch TV, they go to the game with the boys, and that's their whole life. They don't do any personal development typically. When you get to like the Western world, it's more people around 3.5, 3.6 range. And this is still NPC. Like I would say like 80, perhaps 85% of the population is between 3.0 and 3.6. But then you have the 3.7s. And remember, each one is 10 times greater, right? That means more light, more energy, more love comes from them. And 3.7s, these are typically people that will be meditation practitioners, or they'll have their own studio in meditation, or they'll be yoga practitioners, or maybe they sell crystals in a crystal shop, for example, or even Reiki practitioners would be under this. So they need some sort of sovereignty. They need some independence from the system, let's say the matrix or whatnot. When people start getting into 3.8, 3.9, these are conscious people. These are people that have access to their psychic abilities. They may not know what they are or how to use them, but they're becoming quite powerful, 3.8, 3.9s. When you hit 4, so like 3.8 and 3.9s, they're tapping into the fourth dimension. And in the fourth dimension, this is where our psychic abilities are. Our telepathy, our clair abilities, all of the clair abilities, essentially. And then you have other alternate things you can do, like telekinesis, astral projection, remote viewing, all of these things. So people that are above 4 are considered masters, typically, consciously. These are people that are, they could be ascended masters, but they were definitely masters of spirituality in other lives, definitely. And it's very, very, very rare to find a person that's above 4.3. 4.3 is like extremely, extremely high. But I have seen people that are in the 5 range, but I've only seen less than a handful of people that are above that. And then there's Christ consciousness, which was at sixth dimension, but goes up from there. So yeah, it's pretty interesting.
I find that really interesting. States of consciousness. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, what I've discovered is there's an infinite amount of dimensions, and they just, I personally spent an ecosystem of, I think, I didn't measure it, but it was actually about 15 hours, and I went through like 36 dimensions. But they're infinite. I mean, they're infinite, and I mean, it really depends. Once your bets are off, I always bypass the fourth one, and people are like, "Why do you do that?" Well, time and space. Forget about it. You just get right there. You're there, and once you're there, it's an offspring of many different things. But it's very interesting that you've calibrated yourself to see these variations, which is so cool, because this goes back to what I always tell people. What's the limit of your sensory perception? There is none, as long as you have an imagination. It can be acquired at any level, and it can be translated and transmuted into any sort of like digestible understanding where you're at, where you want to be. I mean, as Tom Campbell would say, the larger consciousness system is giving you what you want, where you need to be right now. And that's a really powerful insight when you realize that that's it. Some people. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I find that like I try to put it in a box because we have linear minds. We do quantum things psychically, but we still are linear beings with duality. And so I say 9 is the top dimension, even though you're correct. There is an infinite amount of dimensions to it. Like I said, like 3.1, there's 10 that go between 3.0 and 3.1 as well. And then maybe there's 10 that go between that and the smallest increment of 3.01, right? And then 10 between that. And it just keeps going on into infinity. Yeah. But I think we need to put it into a box to comprehend, so we have something to wrap our hands around, something that we can put in a book. Otherwise, it's just everything is the now, and we are all that is, and we are God, and so it is. And that's life itself. I think we have to humans want to break things down into smaller and smaller pieces, right? So I think that plays into it.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Well, my friend, in closing, you want to share with the audience what you're offering, courses, inside books, where they can find you, one-on-ones, all that kind of stuff. Like I said, I'm going to put all your social under this podcast.
Sure. Well, I am the teacher of the House of El Mystery School, and we have about 230 something archive classes in our archives, which is essentially me channeling different ascended masters. And we've taken all that information. We're going to be turning it into books, transcribing it and turning it into books. But we haven't created any of the books yet. I'm told there's 300 initiate level classes, 200 adept, 100 master, and 10 grandmaster classes. And what we're doing is we're learning the anti-life from Osiris. We learn magic from Merlin. We learn alchemy from Saint Germain. We learn about galactics from Ashtar Sharon. We learn about the matrix from Anu. We learn about many different things from different teachers. So if you want to join us, send me a message. My email is davidlotherington@hotmail.com, or you can email us at info@thoel.ca and get a hold of us. I have a mentorship program. It's essentially 3 months long. And we go over protection, how to talk to your guides, how to use the pendulum to talk to your guides. We go over healthy boundaries. We learn about magic, and we learn about a lot of other things. So if you're interested in that, let me know.
Awesome, my friend. Again, I want to thank you. I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. I'm very grateful.
That goes both ways.
We're, you besties right now at this point.
Especially with that gold dragon back there.
There you go. Yeah.
And for private conversations, I think.
Yeah. Oh, without question, we'll have to have you back on the channel and we'll go deeper on this. Sure. Again, thank you, my friend. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. And I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master Sun Qing, and I'll see you in the next one, guys.